everybody, welcome to the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast, the place where we do stats. Wrestling stats. I am Griff from GA. Joining me today, Anthony and Sergi. We got some Dynamite to talk about, man. Fyter Fest, night 1, night 2, or show 2, in front of a white-hot crowd. And if you thought that Road Rager couldn't get any bigger than Road Rager, somehow they managed to deliver a massive show on Fyter Fest as well. This show was insane. There's a whole lot to talk about, and so we will start, of course, where all good things start, and that is, at the beginning. I mean, come on. If you've watched the show before, you know where we start. And the beginning was just as good as I was hoping it would be. I talked about it last week on the podcast. Jon Moxley versus Carl Anderson for the IWGP US Championship. This was a great opening match. It very much mirrored what Jon Moxley did with Yuji Nagata when they opened Dynamite a few months ago for the US Championship as well. This match was a lot of fun. It was exactly what I wanted it to be, and I think it showed everyone exactly what I was saying, which is that Carl Anderson is a criminally underrated wrestler. I think a lot of people forget how good he really is. So let's talk about this. We'll start with Sergi. This was a strong style match in a lot of ways. Tons of strikes. I'm kind of doing the math off the top of my head. I believe there were 95 strikes in less than 10 minutes in this match, combined between both guys. It's exactly what you'd expect from two hard hitters like this. Is this the kind of match that you enjoy seeing as far as show openers are concerned?
Well, it's interesting that Dynamite has a feel for what sort of match they want to open the show, but they do change it up from time to time in terms of a lot of times they'll use like a really high velocity tag match with lots of high-flying moves and lots of velocity, but sometimes they'll just go with like, let's put in two hard-hitting guys and do a singles match that's very strike and grapple based, and both are really effective, and absolutely it was an effective opener. I remain to be quite as convinced as you about Carl Anderson's potential as a singles wrestler, but it was entertaining, so I'll give it that.
That's fair enough. See, what I like about Carl Anderson, I like guys who are kind of that are versatile and that can fight multiple styles in a match, and that to me is what Carl Anderson really brings to the table. I think he's a good character. I think that a lot of people, he and Doc Gallows kind of get into comedy bits a little bit, where they're when they're with the Elite, they're like, cracking jokes and kind of being like dumb, funny guys. But I think when they get serious, people forget that they are actually really good characters. Carl Anderson is a great promo. And this match to me really shows that Carl Anderson, if he wants to try to, throw strikes with Moxley, he can do that. He out-grappled Moxley in this one. He adds a dive when Moxley actually didn't dive at all, which is interesting. And also more reversals than Mox as well, which is cool just because that's not something that you're used to seeing from like a heel-face dynamic, is that kind of thing. But that's for me, that's what Carl Anderson really brings to the table that a lot of guys, I guess I wouldn't say don't have, but can't do quite as well, at least in my opinion. But Anthony, when you look at this match, I mean...
Well, I think that's a... Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's a big part of it being a Japanese-style, strong-style match, is that the face-heel is not so much to do with the style of what they're doing as just personalities. Carl is arrogant and, entitled, etc., but still working a very technical, hard-hitting match. What were his fouls like? Particularly high in this match?
No, actually,
normally they are
lower than Mox's, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, and because Moxley is a very gritty kind of a babyface, and
Right.
yeah, he was working a very Japanese kind of a style match, and just wasn't even going to the falls. Yeah, it's just a very hard hitting match where, not like Carl Anderson is based on personality and alliance, and not based on how he wrestled at all. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, that's a great point you make, and I really like that AEW is willing to do that, because I do think there's something to be said for, just kind of it's kind of a newer idea. It used to be that heels would wrestle like heels, so you want to dislike them because of their character, because of their personality, but they do things in matches, going all the way back to like Gorgeous George, for example, where they do things in matches that make you dislike them as well. And this idea that you can have a heel who doesn't have to cheat all the time, but is just unlikable, because of the way he acts and everything, that's kind of a newer school idea, and that's something that I really like, again, about Carl Anderson. But I think I am higher on him than the average person. I said it last week. I'm a huge Bullet Club guy, so I've always liked Carl Anderson for that reason. So there's a lot of varied opinions about him. So speaking of that, Anthony, when you talk about like a strong style match, what I find is very interesting is it was high paced in the sense that there was a ton of strikes being thrown. There was always things going on. But if you look at the big offense category, one of the newer things that we track on Pro Wrestling Musings, the big offense is 10-9 in favor of Moxley. So it's a very small total relative to how much they got done in this match. To me, that's very effective when you have two guys who sell believably and hit hard believably, like these two guys do. But did it work that well for you?
So can I just start off by saying we had night one of Fyter Fest on TNT opened by a fight between an AEW star and an Impact star over a New Japan belt. What a crazy world we live in. Like, when you really think about that, that's just, it's just crazy to think about that. So, in regards to the match, obviously, this accomplished a couple of things. So, the first thing it accomplished is obviously getting Mox back, which is obviously something that they want to do because obviously he's had to take time off for the baby. So, it's good to have Mox back, especially in front of fans. That pop for him, shows that he's still got it. Obviously, this is a good fight because if they're going to do a lot more of this, where he's going to defend that a lot more on AEW, which, why not? If they can get the approval to do it, why not? We might see him doing a lot more of these sorts of types of matches. So I guess this is, to get rid of that ring rust. And also, this is also serves for Machine Gun to say, hey, because they're about to go on an excursion back to New Japan. So, this shows that, hey, we can still go on that New Japan style before we actually go over there. So, I think it accomplished those things very well. Couple moments there, obviously, where the ring rust and that all, got there, but it was easily, very, very nitpicky sort of stuff. So, I liked the match. There was blood there, a little bit of blood at the end, which, shows that they were in a fight. Very obviously excited for the Texas death match between him and Lance next week. I do feel that it's a little bit forced because, I know that they've got the history and everything, and obviously it's going to be a great match, and it's in Texas. Having a Texas death match in Texas is going to be great, especially for this type of match. And we know that these two can go because we've seen this match at New Japan. So, it's going to be a great match. But what they're doing with Lance, I mean, the last time we saw him, he was doing a blackout on one of the UFC guys. So I just don't know what they're sort of, I guess, doing with him. And yeah, it's a little bit worrying, I guess, for Lance and him being put in this position to most likely lose again in a big title match. This will be, his last big match was obviously against Miro for a title, and now he has had a few Dark Elevation squash matches, but now you've got him coming out and doing another title match and losing again. A little bit worrying for what they're doing and where they're going with him.
I suppose that's definitely fair, but I mean, I think I think this match is more about what they're going to deliver on the day, and then, you know, whatever happens to Lance. Like, he's one of those guys, I talked about it last week as well, where the way he looks and the way he wrestles will always make him legitimate, and so he can survive a loss to Moxley, because you think about who he lost to, assuming that he will lose to Moxley. You know, he's lost to, like, Cody, and he's lost to Miro, and so, you know, these are believable losses for him, so I don't really mind. The only thing about it is the first Texas death match in AEW I kind of wish was a bit of a bigger deal, with more than a week of build. But for me, knowing what they did in Japan, and then knowing that things get a little crazier in AEW than they do even in New Japan, that I think is all the motivation I need to be excited about that match. And long term, I really don't think it makes a difference either way for Lance Archer. Now, I think AEW is really good at understanding which guys can survive a loss and which guys can't. And so guys that, you know, would look bad if they lose, they don't lose until they need to. And the guys that are okay, they can lose, because AEW does understand not everyone can win, and we don't want a 50-50 book this thing. So, you know, Jon Moxley, if he's better than Lance Archer, he's better than Lance Archer. So he's going to beat him again, I assume. But, you know, for me, the spectacle of this match is enough to really sell it. Sergio, are you excited for the Texas Death Match?
It should really be something. Let's see. As far as Lance Archer, I definitely agree that he's always been the guy who they build up and basically feed guys to until he loses to a big star. Eventually, maybe that story will change, but it probably won't be next week. But that's the thing, is that if it were to happen next week, or it's always going to be kind of like a surprise and you know, it makes you look at the guy in a different light. And, you know, that could happen next week as well as any time. But, as you say, a big part of what we are looking forward to is not the story or the result, but just the match itself. The violence and the brutality of it. It just should be a lot of fun.
Yep. I would agree with that. Speaking of another title match that went down on this last Fyter Fest Night 1, the FTW title, Brian Cage and Ricky Starks. This was a match that has been a long time in the making, and for me, it was, again, really fun. Brian Cage, I think, is phenomenal, and what's interesting is he didn't even really do a ton of the more high-flying things that he can do. I figured if any match was going to be the one where he'd pull that out, it would be this one. But no, he actually was much more of a powerhouse in this match than you would be used to seeing from him if you are familiar with his work in, say, Lucha Underground, for example. But that doesn't mean that it was a bad match. It certainly was not. It was actually, in my opinion, a really fun one. And ultimately, the angle is that Brian Cage is presumably kicked out of Team Taz, and you have the team now uniting around Ricky Starks. You still have Powerhouse Hobbs, and you still have Hook. So to me, this sets up a pretty good story, because you have, you know, Brian Cage versus his 3 former teammates. Taz, I think, is a great heel. I think he's a really good promo. So I think this is really going to work out for all these guys. But I think at the same time, I would understand if someone were to say the story took a really long time to get to a pretty predictable result. But I think it depends on how patient you are, I think, during the build of this story. So, Anthony, I will go to you as our resident story analyzer, we could say. Now that we know kind of where this story is going to go in the future and who's going to be the babyface and presumably what we're looking at here, do you think that the story took too long to get to this point? Or what do you think about this story as it stands right now?
Yeah, I don't think it took too long. I think I've actually saw some complaints in regards to the other way that was too quick.
Oh.
In one of those things that you can never impress make everyone happy, which is, it's everyone's opinion. I'm just some random person. So my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
it could be very different. But yeah, in terms of, for me, I felt like it stayed about as long as I wanted it to stay without, it overstaying well. So obviously it was extended because of Ricky's injury. I have a feeling that they sort of wanted to do it a bit sooner, but obviously Ricky got hurt, so they couldn't do it until he could get cleared. Now we're obviously going to move on to the war with him trying to, destroy Team Taz now. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes and what happens there. I'm guessing we might even get to see a Brian Cage and Stark's second match. That would be pretty good. But I'm most keen for a Will Hobbs versus Brian Cage meat match. That's going to be quite a good match. Will Hobbs is very underrated. I think he's doing a lot of good work. I obviously think Cage will win that one because he'll have to work his way up. But I think more fantasy book, a little bit of fantasy booking. Cage comes in, beats Hobbs, beats Starks in their rematch. Hook debuts, beats Cage, gets the FTW belt, and keeps it forever. And and all hail Hook. That's that's fantasy booking. It won't happen, but
if you say things like that, Ryan's just going to show up and start,
exactly.
Our resident Hook gang member.
That's what I was hoping, but yeah, I think you've got to say it 3 times. Anyway, so yeah, look, I think we're going to look for a few good matches. Obviously, they've got a few very big shows coming up, so they'll need some big matches to put in those shows. And this gives you that where you're getting different sorts of matches with each of the members for him to, come back and try and destroy Team Taz. Whether or not he succeeds is, the journey that we're going to have to take. But yeah, in terms of timing, I think we can forgive him for maybe feeling like a little bit too long or a little bit too slow because obviously there was the injury. And look, they were doing it on commentary, and that I know. Like a lot of people don't watch Dark or Elevation, but there was one match where Starks was actually on commentary during Dark. Actually, I think it was Elevation, and Brian Cage was actually wrestling, and Starks basically blatantly refused to commentate. Like he was being a complete asshole towards him, and that was quite good. Like in story wise, that was quite good. It would be, it was quite good. So yeah, look, I think there was enough there to warrant it. The match was really good. I enjoyed it, and that pop that Ricky got, obviously the right time as well, putting it in Ricky's hometown. He's from Texas, so putting it there, that's going to be a huge moment. When he eventually goes for the title, when they do the video package of his rise, that's going to be in there.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's been too many like man versus faction storylines in AEW? Just out of curiosity.
Very, very hard question because for me, as long as the story makes sense and it doesn't, overstay its welcome, it's fine. When it sort of becomes, a bit convoluted, like what we saw with the Factory versus Nightmare Factory, where things get very weird and it just runs way too long or, doesn't cover. I know that wasn't man, but, for me, look, as long as it makes sense, this one makes sense. There's reasonings why he wants to get back at them. Obviously, he's been betrayed by them. His Twitter, he's like, I didn't even ask to be in Team Taz. So, but, he's made it very clear that that's his goal to destroy them. So, yeah, look, I'm keen to see what happens. I don't think it's overdone. In regards to obviously run-ins and that's another conversation. But yeah, in terms of one man versus a faction, this is a particular faction where they would be more inclined to, do those one-on-one matches, even if there is interference. But the interference normally makes sense. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about some of the matches and some of the prospects there.
So from a statistical perspective, this was a very even match. It ends up being, in terms of offense percentage, it was 51-49 in favor of Ricky Starks. So that's, I mean, you're literally talking about percentage points being the difference. And obviously, you know, Starks would not have won had it not been for the interference of Team Taz. So I think for me, when you're trying to tell the story of the babyface being a better wrestler, but the heel being a better cheater, this is pretty much how you do it. And from a statistical perspective, all those things that you expect the heel to have the advantage in, he certainly does. And in Starks, 12 fouls to Cage's 2. So that's just one example of just how much Ricky Starks had to cheat in this match to get the better of Brian Cage. So from a physical standpoint, I think it really told the story well of face versus heel. So Sergi, for me, if you're giving me a sub 10-minute match and you're trying to basically do kind of, I would say pretty much a turn in the match. I mean, it wasn't like a hard turn. It wasn't like Cage was a straight heel and then became a babyface, but a turn in the sense that he goes from tweener to now I think we're pretty sure he's a babyface. This is kind of how you do it from a physical standpoint. Right. What did you think of this match?
Well, I think it was very effective. There was only one thing that really undercut that story that they were trying to tell, is that unfortunately they were also giving Ricky his return in his hometown. So he had his return pops and his hometown pops and was not really getting that heel reaction from the crowd. But I think that will change once they move on to other parts of the country or even of Texas. So that was a negative. They didn't have that quite the fan reaction that you might have hoped for someone who was, being pretty despicable.
Yeah.
But the thing is that cheating and whether it's the right way to go or not has been the story all along. This is the story that Team Taz has been telling, that Cage has been telling. The whole question of Cage's point of view is, if I cheat, I may get a W, but I don't really have that feeling of I know I'm the better man, and so it's worthless to me. And Taz being of the point of view of, hey, you're great, but if you can't beat, you're just too big. If there's a guy you can't beat in 5 minutes, you can't beat them because you're going to run out of steam. You've got all those, I forget the term for the poisons that build up in muscles as you work them. You've got all those building up, and you need us. You need a Team Taz cheating for you for those more challenging matches. Mm-hmm. And that's been the story all along. And I thought it was really interesting how Powerhouse Hobbs was like, no, you're not going to cheat. And then you thought, like, is Powerhouse going to turn babyface in this? And then it was like, no, my problem wasn't with you cheating. It was with you cheating, because the ref might see you. Let us distract him, Let us make sure that you don't get caught cheating. Mm-hmm. We don't want you getting like the first DQ loss of AEW history, right?
Yeah, I think it's funny that I've read a lot of reviews and people are saying, well, this was the predictable result. Starks was going to win. They were all going to turn on Brian Cage. I'm like, I mean, yeah, like with the gift of hindsight, I guess it's predictable, but people seem to forget how many times AEW swerves us when things like this happen. So for me, when Hobbs did pull away the belt, I'm kind of thinking like, man, this might not actually go down the way that it will. And to me, that's all you need to make something unpredictable. Yeah, I can look back and say, well, obviously this was going to happen. But in the moment, if I'm thinking, well, maybe this isn't going to happen. Maybe we're going to get like Cage and Hobbs both kind of separate from Team Taz. And so you just have Taz, Hook, and Starks left. If you make me think that in the moment, that's all I really need in order to get invested in what eventually happened. So I did end up popping for the belt shot, even though, again, with the gift of hindsight, that was the most likely thing that was going to happen. But you gave me the moment of uncertainty there, and that's really all you need to do, in my opinion. What was
There's one other point I want to make about Team Taz.
Yeah.
It's that this change really helps Team Taz be a better faction, a more effective faction. They, up until now, I've always been the guy to say Team Taz is less than the sum of its parts. There's too much talent, and it doesn't fit together in the proper way for a faction to push everybody towards some goal. It's like, okay, who's trying to be champion? You know, like in the Pinnacle or the Inner Circle, you always knew what every person's role was. You know, these guys want to be tag champs. This guy is just a hired muscle. This guy wants to be the champion. You know, there's a specific role for everybody.
Right.
And there was just too much talent. Kind of them falling apart was inevitable, and I think that's a big part of the story that they were telling. And now that it's happened, what's left of Team Taz is going to be a lot more effective than they've been up until now, because they've just kind of been at odds and at cross purposes.
I would certainly agree with that, because I think Brian Cage is the guy who was kind of responsible for that. It's not his fault. I'm not saying like he did something wrong. I just think that there was such a gap in terms of success and in terms of style between Cage and everyone else in Team Taz, that because you had Brian Cage in there, it was kind of like he was always the odd man out. Because he was in there, he's a natural main eventer just by who he is and what he does, that if the group is not performing at a main event level, then he's kind of dragging everyone down because those expectations are on him. So now if you just remove him, now you have a group that can elevate its own guys, because as of right now, Starks, Hobbs, and Hook, they're not main eventers yet, but Team Taz as a group, with a little bit of build, could conceivably be believable main eventers, and that's what you want a group to do, is like you said, elevate the guys that are in it. And so without Brian Cage being there to be like the comparison point, I think that's what makes it better. And then from Cage's perspective, if he can work babyface, he can do a lot more of the high-flying stuff that I mean, he hasn't really done a ton of in AEW. I think there's a lot of AEW fans who don't know what this guy's really capable of. So now that he's able to work as a babyface, I think he can really show that and easily get some crowds on his side, which is kind of what this match was lacking, if anything. The crowd seemed to be with Ricky Starks, and I think that's just because, you know, Cage hasn't given them a ton of reason to be fans of his just from his AEW work. And Ricky Starks, I think, is he's sort of an up-and-coming star in AEW, and, you know, there's a lot to like about him in a heelish kind of way, you know. You know what I mean? It's hard to describe, but it is kind of this new phenomenon that we see with fans. They will cheer heels if they like them, even though they might be wanting them to lose. We've talked about this several times on the podcast, so I just think I think that's kind of where Starks is sitting.
It's not that new.
I mean, yeah, I guess
especially
it's not,
when you look at Starks, because he's very much a Rock style kind of a character. He does a lot of things like The Rock, and his heelness is very much like The Rock when he's a heel. The fans are ready to switch that if they gives them an excuse to. But I think in this case, a lot of that was just the fact that it was a hometown and a return, and that he can get a heel reaction in the future.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely a good point. Cody Rhodes and Malakai Black. If you want to talk about a pretty simple story, I think this is a pretty simple one. And I think that this has a pretty simple conclusion that we're building towards, but that's totally fine with me. It certainly seems like Malakai Black is on pace to beat Cody, probably kick the hell out of him, and people are going to cheer him, and that's just what it's going to be. It's very interesting. Cody Rhodes, I think, occupies this very weird space because I think he is going to be permanently cheered by fans. I think that even if he's a heel, fans are just going to cheer him. But what's weird is that he doesn't feel like that kind of guy. There are guys like that, like Jon Moxley, that are just so over that they will never not be cheered by fans. Everyone's going to love him forever. Cody Rhodes doesn't feel like that, but yet he commands big reactions. Fans are reacting the way they're supposed to. So to me, this is just a really good story, and I'm excited to see when these two finally do have a match. I'm excited to see Malakai Black in the ring. So after 2 weeks, they're pretty much doing everything they need to do for me to really get Malakai Black over, and that's not even including his promo on Twitter, the mental hospital promo that he did last week, and that just, to me, gets over his character even more. But even if you didn't see that, I think you have enough to go on in his first 2 weeks. Anthony, how do you feel about this story so far? I know it's in its infancy, but can you make any judgments about the story as it stands right now?
Yeah, I can actually. So obviously, let's just talk about the visual first. So we've got Cody obviously in his white suit. We've got Malakai in the black. Obviously, light and dark. It's so simple, but it works so well as well. So, I really do like that, the opposing figures. Cody felt like he was on today. He was back to being Cody, which was really good. There was a Twitter person, ProRes Mark, or Bonafide Mark, who shared this. It was basically a promo that Cody Rhodes made 2 years ago, which talked about going to a stable and shooting the horse. It was in regards to the match just before his brother. And then obviously Malakai in his promo talked about the killing a horse as well. So,
right.
It was referencing that, 2 years, like there was a very little detail that, for those who want to go and look up that stuff, which, I love lore and all that. It just, I love that sort of stuff. That's me. You can go and find that stuff and look into it and be like, oh, cool. There's a long-term reference. Like there's a reason for this. And he's using his own words against him. But if you don't want to, it's still a really great promo. And, what I liked the most is that he went out there, it wasn't just I'm going to talk my shit, but I'm not going to back it up. They went at each other and they got pulled apart and all that. Look, as long as Malakai kicks his head off and wins, we're all good. If anything else other than that happens, then we're going to have issues. But, this is good. And look, we could even, whatever happens at the end, as long as, like I said, as long as Malakai wins, we're good. And it's really interesting to see that where he is, what he's going to do. And like I said, I love Tommy End. Do not get me wrong. Ever since I discovered him in NXT, huge fan. So for me, him on AEW is amazing. I'm really excited about what we're going to do, what we're going to see. My partner, who doesn't really watch wrestling, I was watching it, and she walks in and goes, "Oh my god, that guy looks like Undertaker." I was like, well, because she used to watch it back in Undertaker's, where Undertaker and John Cena. So she was like, "Oh my god, that guy looks like Undertaker. Is he the new Undertaker?" Then I was like, no, he's not, but but that's a recognizable thing, that the look, and that's going to get people. And look, I love I'm very big into the YouTube sort of looking and seeing what's going on with YouTube. The video for Malakai Black's return during Arrival for Road Rager did absolute numbers. I think it was like 100,000, 1 million views or something. I'm trying to quickly grab it now. 1.4 million views it had. 1.4 million views. Their other matches around anywhere between 200 and 500,000 K, but that Malakai Black one, 1.4 million. And that just shows his he's gonna get views, and that's I'm keen for that. So yeah, I'm all in. Let's see where this goes. Hopefully, I'm hoping that it's much better than Cody's last feud. But look, Cody with fans, Cody knows how to do things with fans. I think that the fans not being around just kind of, I guess, affected him a bit. But yeah, it was good to see him back on. It was good to see him back feeling and sounding like he's himself. So yeah, let's hope that the right thing happens.
Sergey, one of the biggest articles that we've had on ProWrestlingMusings.com over the last couple weeks has been a roundtable where we talk about the next 5 AEW World Champions. Anthony contributed to that. You were not on this particular one, but I do want to ask you this because it came out before the debut of Malakai Black. So if you were to think just in your head about the next 5 World Champions, would Malakai Black fit in there somewhere?
That's certainly possible. I'm not a major... I try not to get too far ahead of the story that they're telling now in terms of that. It's obvious that it's very possible that that it could be Adam Page soon. Beyond that, who knows? And I'm fine with that. But yeah, it wouldn't be at all surprising for Malakai Black to be considered a world title level person. More interesting to me right now is what he's doing right now with Cody. I think it's interesting. We've called it a simple story, and on the most superficial level, it obviously is. You've got the man in white coming to the defense of an old man who was attacked for no reason by the man in black, who seems very satanic. It's, just a simple good versus evil. But it really isn't, because first off, the man in black, who's very satanic and sinister, is also an ass kicker who people are very likely to not be that into booing. The guy in white, check out that white suit and that gold lapel chain, and he somehow managed to look more like a supervillain, or like a James Bond supervillain, than the guy who is trying to look like Satan. It's just amazing, just how, on one level, it's the most simple black versus white, light versus darkness, versus darkness. But on another level, it's one of those kind of stories where, if you're familiar with comic books, like something like Spawn or something, or Preacher, where you're not sure. That's heaven versus hell, but you're not sure which is actually the good guy. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And it's the kind of thing where Malakai Black coming in, he basically said there's going to be a lot of very kind of subtle storytelling things that I'm going to do. That's how I like to tell my stories. And we're already seeing evidence of that. And so obviously the suits, a lot of people picked up on that, but the parallels to the promo before Cody Dustin, like Anthony mentioned, is, again, one of those more subtle things that I think we have come to expect now from Malakai Black. So I think it's cool in and of itself that there's going to be this whole kind of cult following just around all of the kind of Easter eggs that Malakai Black will leave when he does his promos and segments and all the rest. So for me, this is an effective story. I think Cody Rhodes remains one of the best promos in wrestling, and just one of those guys who can work with anyone and really tell a good story. And I think he's done it with pretty much everyone he's worked with in AEW. So I think, the whole debacle with the Factory and the Nightmare Factory and all that kind of stuff, I think because of how quickly that story changed without much of an explanation, that's what really hurt it. And I think people let that get into their mind and say, well, Cody is not a great promo, can't tell a great story, whatever. And to me, that's not really the case. I think what he excels at is exactly what he's doing right now. And I think because of his efforts, Malakai Black will be a upper mid-card main event level guy almost immediately. beyond just the fact that everyone likes him, but now he can really be proven that he's on that level. Let's talk about Christian Cage and Matt Hardy. This match was, once again, just solid. These are two veterans that know exactly what they're doing, and they have this match style that is just really effective, and I think what helped me enjoy this match even a little bit more was actually Styles Make Fights, because there is such a when you look at the way that their styles mesh, there's almost like a symmetry. Like what one is good at, the other, I wouldn't say struggles at, but the other doesn't emphasize. And so it kind of has this really cool blend between these two of blend of styles, I guess you could really say. But luckily for me, I am obviously not that good at explaining exactly why their styles mesh so well, but thankfully we do have someone who is really good at explaining why their styles mesh so well. Obviously the creator and author of Styles Make Fights. So Sergi, I want to turn this over to you. Looking at this really helped me appreciate this match even more. So can you help me explain exactly what's going on between these two stylistically and why these two work so well, even though both of them are at an age where you wouldn't expect two men of this age to put on a really good match the way they did?
Well, yeah, I think that Christian Cage and Matt Hardy meeting again at this point is a lot like anybody who's had a career feud with somebody and then returning again. Like, oh hey, the stars have aligned and we're going to have a return match. There have been a lot of guys like that over time. It's like your Steamboat Flair kind of meetings where it's like 10, 15 years down the road, hey, can we reignite that magic? In some ways. Now, on the other hand, Christian Cage and Matt Hardy, they made a big point of the fact that this is only the third time that any of their singles matches have been televised. They have been mostly in tag team feuds. And a big part of it is that as they've gotten older, their styles have respectively changed a lot both because of what they've learned and their personal taste changing as you get older. A lot of wrestlers will slow down both because their body needs them to, and because they can appreciate the virtues of that type of style. Where Christian Cage and Matt Hardy were both flying speed demons when they were young and originally feuding, and that's a big part of it, is that they were not really what you would call a styles clash back in the day. But today, yeah, they definitely would be considered that, as Matt Hardy has, especially since he turned heel and became Big Money Matt, has become the guy who does not leave his feet very much, focuses a lot on submission holds, painful submission holds, cheating and taunts, uses cheats, or uses fouls and taunts to get under his opponent's skin more than just about anybody else in the company. And he does use a lot of the grapples and throws. And he just does not focus on strikes or aerial moves. Whereas Christian, his focus is strikes, aerial moves, and to some extent reversals. He does have some of that. And as baby faces go, he's one of the dirtier baby faces. And that's just one of those, he's a wily veteran kind of thing, and so he's given a little bit more leeway on that than a fresh young babyface would. Much like Moxley.
Right, yeah, exactly. I was just going to make that comparison. It's a really interesting, I would say it's an interesting way to look at it, because when you compare the match that these two had to their normal how they wrestle, what's very interesting to me is that for the two of them, things don't change very much, and it's
No.
What's interesting, I guess I should say, I mean, obviously it sounds obvious, but what's interesting is because if you just look at one match that a guy has, especially in AEW where, it's very match heavy. So guys have a lot of matches. Even main eventers have a lot of matches. So very often if you just pick one out, especially if it's a very distinct build with this kind of feud, the match can and oftentimes does tend to look different from their normal style that they have built over an average of all of their matches. But this one's actually very similar to what they've done. And I think that just goes to show that these two guys, they understand the style that they're fighting in, and they understand that it works. And so Christian doesn't have to change very much because he has the style of a babyface. It's a particularly dirty babyface, but as we've established multiple times, that doesn't necessarily mean you're not a babyface. In AEW, you can play dirty and still be the good guy. And Matt Hardy, he's just a heel, and because he goes up against Christian in this manner, he can be pretty dominant as he tends to be, and it's very believable because Christian's a great seller. He tends to give up a lot of offense in his matches, just in general, and so to me, like, again, all you do is just put two guys together whose styles mix, and you get a good match, and the feud is a separate part of it. Just from the physical standpoint, these two guys know how to wrestle and they know what they're doing.
Well, to address what you'd said, there are instances where someone's going to make a big change up in their strategy, and that's when they're up against someone who you could see that strategy would be an issue. Like, I strike a lot, but that guy's like a super striking a genius, so I'm going to emphasize some different part of my game. Or I lost against this guy before, I'm going to try something different this time. But in this case, none of that applied. You have two guys whose styles already clash, and in such a way that's a good mix. And for the most part, what you saw looking at their averages versus what they did in this match is that they only emphasized what they usually do a little bit more. Yeah. Matt Hardy tends to dominate offense, did so even more so in this match. Christian Cage tends to do a rope-a-dope and come out victor despite giving up most of the offense, and that was even emphasized more so in this match. Christian Cage's biggest offense is aerial, and that was even more so in this match, etc. The only things that particularly would say that were changed up is that, actually, let me double check one thing. I was going to say about that. Matt Hardy actually rarely leaves his feet, especially since turning heel. Did so a bit more in this match, but not a ton, and also used a bit more strikes. And I think that a part of that, those are the more babyface side of offense, and I think that a part of that is just facing up against an old rival and bringing back a little bit of, not very much, but a little bit of the style of their old feuds back in the day, of the TLC matches and all that.
Yep. And I think the reference to that works really well because you don't have to be able to do giant 630s and kind of these. When you think of flyers, you think of like Ray Phoenix and these ridiculous springboards and rope walks and things like that. Sometimes you don't have to be able to do that. Sometimes you can just do your basics and it works, especially if it's sold right. And these two guys certainly know how to sell it right. Anthony, from a story perspective, does this go anywhere or is this done for you? Are we done now?
Please, I hope it's done. Yeah, look, I hope it is. Christian's obviously gone through. He's fought a couple of the House Hardy people already. So I'm hoping now it is done. However, I don't think it is, because on Matt Hardy's Twitter after the match, he did say that. Now, this is actually a really funny fact that this is only their third ever singles match, considering the length of time these two guys have been wrestling and the fact that they've been in such iconic feuds, that this is the third individual one-on-one match. That's quite good. But yeah, on Matt Hardy's Twitter, he said that the reason he lost was because he's got a newborn baby and he's sleep deprived, which I found quite funny. But he did say that, this isn't over, and I dreaded hearing that. I think that obviously we'll probably get Jungle Boy, Christian Cage, and Luchasaurus, Jurassic Express plus Cage versus Hardy, maybe one or two more times, maybe in group matches, we'll see. But yeah, look, to be honest, I hope it ends, because I want Christian to move on. One interesting thing is that the commentary after the match did say that Christian's might be in contention for, his name might be in contention for a title now. So, they started planting that small seed there. I'm very interested to see what happens with this sort of, I guess, relationship, because I've seen a few people suggest that maybe we might see a heel turn from Christian against Jungle Boy, and then obviously them two go into a feud after maybe he does the title match. So maybe he fights Kenny in a title match, he loses, and then takes out the loss on Jungle Boy going heel, or we might even see a Luchasaurus heel turn. And look, to be honest, that would be pretty good, considering he was kind of like the guy, he was the guy for Jurassic Express, and now Jungle Boy's the guy. There's a couple of things that they could do there. But yeah, look, I hope that they move away from Hardy, but I have a feeling that we may not be quite done with them as of yet. But Hardy's been doing good work. His little group now focused on a storyline on Dark, where they've basically gotten one of the Indian wrestlers into their group, and they're basically treating him like a slave, basically. So I'm guessing he's going to turn against them and attack them at some point down the road, but we'll see what happens there. But yeah, in terms of this one, done with the story. Hope they all move on. Don't think they will. I think they've probably got one or two more matches left in them.
Well, speaking of the World Championship scene, we did get, obviously, a really good look at what that's going to be looking like in the near future with this segment with Hangman Page, and then the Elite comes out, the Dark Order comes out. This, to me, is exactly what I wanted to see from the Hangman, because, again, I've said this over and over and over again, to me, in order for this story to work, you really need to see personal growth in Hangman, and what that looks like to me is for him to return to the character that he really was at the beginning of AEW, but now it's earned. He has an actual he's earned the ability to be that kind of badass cowboy that he was when he came in, whereas before it was just kind of his gimmick. That's who he was. But now, we've actually seen that development in him, and I think that we're really getting a look at that he is, in this segment, willing to address Kenny Omega. He's willing to throw down the challenge, and he's not going to back down. And for me, there's always a thing. I understand that, AEW, it's my favorite wrestling company. I love almost everything they do, and I'm open with that. I'm not saying that I'm trying to be unbiased or anything like that. I really do genuinely enjoy AEW. But even then, there's always that thing in the back of your mind when you do what we do, when you have this podcast and when you talk about these things, that maybe they're going to go a different way, maybe they're going to mess up the story somehow. That's always a possibility, no matter how good a company is, no matter how well they're telling stories. And I think for me, this just confirms that they're doing this story right, and Hangman is confident. He is a badass, which is exactly what I wanted to see from him. And the match that they set up, this 10-man tag, and I think it's elimination rules as well. I mean, this is just, to me, it's obvious what's going to happen, but in the best possible way. It's one of those things that, yeah, you can see the telegraph here, you can see what's going on, but I just can't wait to see it. You know what I mean? And that is a great story, that even sometimes you don't have to swerve people to make a great story. Sometimes you can just tell them, you know what, this is how this story is going to end, and you still are really invested in what's going on. And so for me, I was not feeling Hangman Page for a big chunk of the pandemic era. Basically, after he and Kenny lost the tag titles, I really kind of lost interest in Hangman as a character. That interest is back. I'm into it. I want to see him beat Kenny Omega, and that's pretty much exactly what you want to have from a title feud. So, Anthony, again, as our resident story expert, I know that you've been high on Hangman Page really in the past. Does this segment make you even more excited, more hopeful to see him eventually challenge Kenny Omega for the title?
Now, you mentioned that you think that it's predictable that the outcome of the 5v5, but I don't think it is, and the simple reason is that we all know that this match, the Kenny versus Hangman match, should be at All Out. If Hangman wins, how are they gonna keep this match going, or like this match off from happening before All Out? Like, if he wins, obviously the stakes are there, everyone knows what they're fighting for. So if they win, they're going to obviously get the title shots. Now, the All Out isn't until September, so effectively you've got 2 months. Now, it wasn't announced for next week, so I'm guessing it's going to be Fight for the Fallen, which is the end of July. So you've got basically the entirety of August to hold off doing this match. Now, look, they could, or they could lose and have to, find another way to get the title shot as well. So, I don't think it's as clear cut as what's going to happen as a lot of people think. Obviously, we're going to end up with Hangman versus Kenny. Now, for that 5v5, I've seen this said a lot, and I've got to say it myself. I don't want Kenny in the match. I would like to see him. Now, he has actually got a no DQ match against Sami Callihan at Slammiversary this weekend. So, you could get Don Callis coming out and saying Kenny can't take place in the match. He's going to take 2 weeks off because he's injured, and they're going to replace him with, maybe Nakazawa or whoever, But the first time them two wrestle, I want to see it at All Out. I don't want to see them all wrestle. So yeah, look, I don't want to see Hangman versus Kenny just yet. I hope that they hold off and might do something, give us a bit of a swerve. But it depends on what's going to happen, because if they win, like if he's in the match and they win, we have to see Kenny get pinned by someone. Obviously, we want to see Kenny get pinned by Hangman, but does that take away from him beating him at All Out? Obviously, I'm not, I don't know how it's going to be, but I think, my feeling is that it could. I want to see the first time Kenny gets pinned, because they have been making a big deal of how long he's been since he's lost. The first time he loses at All Out against Hangman, in that big, massive moment, it's going to be a huge, huge moment. So, yeah, look, I think it's very interesting. Obviously, there's a few ways that this could go. I'm very keen to see who they're going to put in there from the Dark Order. My favourite thing, and this was one of those little things, is that Hangman said Dark Order does not back down from a fight. So he referred to himself kind of in that group. Whether that leads to him, formally joining, because he's only a friend of Dark Order at the moment still, but whether or not that leads to him actually joining the Dark Order, that's another little thread that adds to this overall story. And that's just the beauty of it, that, there's so much, and now we're getting to the end of it where, okay, cool, this has been going on, this has been simmering away, now it's go time, let's go. I'm all in, but yeah, like I said, they've got to be very, very careful, because obviously they've done such a good job, and obviously I've got all the faith in the world. They've done such a good job up until this point. It really suck if they failed at the last hurdle. So yeah, look, for me, in my fantasy booking brain, I don't want to see Kenny versus Hangman until All Out. However they do that is up to them, whether he takes the loss, whether or not they win, whatever happens, or hell, time limit draw for the 5v5. However it has to happen, I don't want there to be a winner because they need to try and find a reason to extend this to All Out.
Yeah, see, for me, I mean, I definitely understand where you're coming from. I guess in my opinion, if you just do this at Fight for the Fallen, which would be, I mean, let me check my calendar really fast. It would be July 28th, I believe, is Fight for the Fallen. So you basically have a month before you get All Out. In my opinion, you can tell this story for a month. You can kind of draw it out a little bit. You can give Kenny a match somewhere in there if you really want to, or whatever you want to do. So I really don't mind if that's the story they tell. I'm not saying that I would be disappointed if they tell a different one. Obviously, I won't be. But for me, the what I believe is the predictable story, what I would predict anyway, is you have some situation where Hangman in that match, in that elimination match, gets down like in a 2-on-1 or even a 3-on-1 situation. He fights back and he wins. And for me, you have the Elite. They're all well built, so it's not going to bury any of them. It's just going to elevate Hangman and again, really elevate him into that sort of badass, like unbeatable kind of status, which is what you need in order to beat Kenny Omega. If they don't do that, that'll be totally fine. I'd like to see what they do. But to me, that's what this is trending to. That's and it's what I want to see as well. But I definitely understand where you're coming from. I think I'm of two minds about this. I think you could easily have Hangman pin Kenny Omega in this elimination match, and so there's no doubt he's a number one contender. You're kind of teasing people with what they all want to see at All Out, presumably when they do that title match, and that's kind of an old school thing. You have the challenger pin the champion, and so I think they could do that, but I also think there's a good possibility that Kenny Omega isn't in this match at all, like you said, and maybe he is and doesn't get pinned. I mean, whatever the case may be, I do think that there's a lot they could do with this, and so even though I said the story is fairly predictable, in my opinion, I still think there's a lot of unpredictability within the minutia of the story, which again, as I said earlier, is all you need from me in order to really enjoy it. Just give me a moment of doubt about where this story might be going, and that's all I really need. So I think
don't get me wrong. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm enjoying this story. I guess my main concern is whether or not they're gonna be able to hold off that long. Where you've got a challenger who has just won the right to challenge for your belt, and you're going to make him wait 4 weeks. Like, yes, I know that they could do things to, put it off, and I'm sure that they'd find a way around it. But, for me, so if we really look at it, the last time Kenny defended his AEW title was the 26th of June, which was the Saturday Night Dynamite. So you're asking for 1, 2, 3, 4, nearly 3 months, two months and a half, nearly 3 months of not defending the title on TV. That it's a bit of an ask. Like, yes, he can do other things, but for there to be no AEW title match for that length of time, it does seem like a little bit too long, especially when it's the number one title, and obviously we're not seeing the TNT title defended every single week. So it's just, for me, it's just. It's not like I said, I have all the faith that they're going to do it right because they've got it so right so long. It's just something that, I feel that, there is a legitimate discussion that can be had of, okay, how are they going to get to All Out? How is that going to happen? And, I'm happy to find out how they're going to do it. But, yeah, look, fantasy booking my hat on. Like I said, I don't want to see Kenny get pinned for the title opportunity. I think it's very lazy. We're very critical of other promotions that do that. I don't want to see him get things. The reason why they've got the rankings is to get around that. You're high enough on the ranking. Hangman has now been number one on the ranking for a while, and yes, he did lose it for a little bit, but he's right back there now. There's. Like I said, it's one of those things of there's a bit of time there. I'm sure they can do it, but will it feel right for having it hold on that long? I'm not sure. I can't tell the future, so I wish I could, because if I could, I'd be a millionaire.
Sergio, do you think there's too much time if Kenny does not defend before All Out? Is there too big of a gap there? Is there too much time to wait between presumably Fight for the Fallen, where this match will happen, and All Out? I mean, should they try to put something else in there, or do you think they can actually tell that story over a long enough period of time that you would be comfortable waiting until All Out to see that match and not see Kenny defend in between?
Yeah, I mean, when you say something, like, something would be a title defense. And normally, yeah, a title defense isn't going to take that long, but then you got to go back and remember, how did they set up this story to begin with? The very first promo that set up the story was Kenny saying, I have no challengers left, I'm going to take some time off. So that kind of excuses it. That kind of gives a justification for why he doesn't have any interim challengers. He's already beat everybody, so that's already taken care of. And why doesn't Hangman get his shot sooner? Just simply because this is such a big match, it should happen at our biggest show. Bam, that part's dealt with. Now, you were saying that there are some things that you think are not exactly necessarily predictable, but the most obvious course. Is it correct that you were saying that basically that would be where Hangman ends up alone in the 5-man with everybody else eliminated, with still a few people left on the other side, and he has to do some super heroics to get his title shot?
In my opinion, that seems to be the trend in matches like this. So I would say that would be that would be what would come to mind if you talk about a story like this. I wouldn't say it's obvious or like that's definitely going to happen, but when I first heard this announcement, that's immediately what came to my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree that's definitely one of the ways that they could go with it, and the most obvious one would be to have the Dark Order kind of fall to the wayside more quickly than the Elite, and leave Hangman fighting alone, just to show how strong he is. And that's definitely one way they could go with it. I've definitely heard other people theorize, like, what if they eliminate Kenny early? Obviously, they would need to hit him with a lot of finishers and gang up on him and cheat in order to do that. And then it can be a power of friendship story with Dark Order fighting for their friend. That could be interesting too. But the important thing is, well, I mean, you don't get me wrong. It is certainly possible that, like Anthony was saying, that they could go with the Dark Order team losing, and there's some other thing a couple weeks down the road that gets him, Hangman, his title shot. The title shot still has to happen for sure, but that just seems like too much of one step forward, two steps back, and I just don't see that. I definitely see Dark Order one of those ways coming out the winner, either with it's showing Hangman's endurance and power, that he's able to do it, even though he has several guys he has to go through, or a case of Dark Order, proving their power of friendship and coming through for their friend, something along those lines.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I was talking a couple weeks ago on the podcast about the potential of doing a Dusty finish with Kenny as champion, because when I was watching Jungle Boy fight for the world title, I was like, man, if you do a Dusty finish here, I feel like you get so much heat and you get so much sympathy for the babyface. So talking about doing a couple of those things, and I mentioned that just because I think that would be the worst thing to do in a story like this, and so giving us the swerve of the Dark Order doesn't win, and so we have to find some other kind of plot MacGuffin in order to put Hangman back into that match, to me is not productive at all, because no one wants to see that. Hangman has already reached terminal velocity, so to speak, in terms of babyface sympathy, in terms of being over as a babyface. You don't get him any more over by, having the heels cheat and then having to find some alternate way in order to have him get the title challenge. I think at this point, he's as sympathetic and as over as he's ever going to be. And so what you need to do now is build him as a believable world championship contender. And to do that, eliminate 2 or 3 members of the Elite single-handedly. Probably 2. I think 3 would be a little much given how well the Elite has been built. But 2 guy having a 2-on-1 kind of scenario and have him overcome that. To me, that's exactly what you need to do in order to position him as a believable challenger to Kenny Omega. Everyone wants to see him be the champion, but as we've learned in the past in wrestling, just because you want to see someone be a champion, if you just hotshot the title onto them, doesn't necessarily mean that it works. So you have to have 2 things. You have to have everyone want to see the babyface be the champion, and then you have to have the babyface be a believable champion. And they've already got the first one, so now you have to work on the second one. You have to make sure that once he has that title, he is a believable best wrestler in the world. And so, taking down 2 of the best wrestlers in the world, because that's everything the Elite is. They are elite wrestlers. So having him do that, to me, that fulfills the second one. He is, everyone wants to see him, and now he really is one of, if not the best wrestlers in the world. And that's what you need to have for a world championship challenger, in my opinion. But as I said, that to me is the predictable way. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go that way. And so my mind is open. I'm not saying if they don't do that, the story sucks or anything like that. Just to me, that would be my prediction as of right now.
But I agree with you that that a dusty finish would work for someone like Jungle Boy, because it puts the idea in your mind of, man, what if he had one?
Exactly.
And it makes you mad at the bad guy and thinking about the future for the good guy. But it's not future time for Adam Page. It's now time,
Yep.
That's why a dusty finish would be nothing but deflating if they did something like that with him.
Yep. You're absolutely right.
And the other thing was that, there's a third thing that you need if we're talking about Adam Page becoming champion All Out, and that's a plan for that new championship reign. Okay, now what? Who are your challengers? And that's changing everybody's thinking. Like, we've been thinking about building Christian up as a babyface because at some point Kenny's going to need that challenger. If Adam Page is going to win, that changes all of those considerations. Now you got to think, should Christian turn on Jungle Boy in order to make him a hated heel and then beat Jungle Boy? I know that sucks, but just to build him up so that Adam has somebody new to fight.
Yeah, I can see that. I think you could also tell the story of just Christian being a veteran and basically doing the Jungle Boy thing, but with Adam Page, so he basically, remember when Heath Slater was leaving WWE and he came back for one night and he basically went up to Drew McIntyre and was said all this stuff to kind of get a rise out of him, and then the whole idea was that these two have been friends and Heath Slater has this respect for him, but he wanted to make sure that he was on the level that he needed to be, that kind of thing. I think you could do that with Christian. I think you could have a babyface versus babyface with Christian and Adam Page, just because, as we said earlier, Christian is kind of a dirtier type of babyface. He's a more gritty kind of babyface, comparable to John Moxley. And he's already been positioned as the veteran who's been around a long time. He's doing that same thing with Jungle Boy when Jungle Boy was challenging for the World Championship. So I don't necessarily, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be opposed to potentially Christian versus Jungle Boy and having Christian turn heel and all that kind of stuff, because Christian is a great heel. But I think there is another way you could do Christian versus Adam Page without having to have Christian turn heel on Jungle Boy.
That's a really good point. There's a lot of characters in AEW that are top-level babyfaces that have enough ambiguity, like Cody, like Jericho, there's so many of them that have that enough ambiguity that if there's a babyface champion, they can go up against him without it becoming an issue of the fans not knowing, choosing the new guy over Hangman.
Yep.
They're going to sympathize with Hangman more over a lot of guys that are ostensibly baby faces.
Yep, I think you're absolutely right. And if you want evidence of the fact that AEW actually does have several guys that are believable to potentially slot into that first challenger for Hangman Page, just go look at the next 5 champions roundtable. It's up on ProWrestlingMusings.com right now.
True.
And you have obviously a couple guys that say MJF should be the next world champion after Adam Page, but you have a couple guys saying that Pac could be the next guy. You have Brian Cage. So there's definitely a lot of guys that could slot into that particular position. And now that we're seeing, now that we've officially seen Team Taz, go full heel, you could potentially see Ricky Starks go into a title feud with Hangman Page. I think that there are a lot of characters that could go in there. I will just say, kind of as a cautionary tale, I said this last week on the podcast as well, and I will continue to say it. It does seem to me that this is a case of Adam Page will be a better challenger than he is a champion. And that's not necessarily, sometimes that does happen, and that's okay. So I think for AEW, I think they shouldn't be too wary of pulling the plug quickly on the Hangman title run, just because you can put the belt back on him at some point if you want to. But I do think if things are getting stale, do a title switch, because there is that possibility that things will get stale because it was so hot during his challenge and fans are coming back, and every time he's on screen, there's such a visceral reaction from the fans that it's almost impossible that his title reign will live up to those kinds of expectations. So again, it's nothing to do with him. It's just kind of, again, when you reach terminal velocity, so to speak, there's nothing you can do after that. So I think there's no issues with putting the belt on him, giving fans that moment, and then, he can have a solid, 2-3 months with the belt, have someone take it off him. It could be MJF, could be Cage, whoever you want it to be. To me, there's no shame in doing it that way. Hangman Page is still mega over. He's still a fan favorite, and nothing changes that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd honestly be surprised if Hangman's reign wasn't one of the shorter ones that they've had. It's probably going to be on the shorter side compared to other AEW world title reigns, which have all been pretty long up until now.
Yeah, that's actually something that's really characterized the World Championship in the past. Let's get to the 2 quicker matches on this show because they kind of happened back to back, and they were very short, both in my opinion pretty good, and really did what they were designed to do. So first you had Sammy Guevara versus Wheeler Yuta. Sammy is super over, and he is a great athlete. He looked fantastic. He looked smooth as hell in the ring. And the GTH looks really cool, in my opinion. So he beats Wheeler, and I thought that was a really fun match. And then you have Yuka Sakazaki versus Penelope Ford. Again, pretty quick, but did exactly what it was supposed to do. Yuka is really over. This is something I said last week on the podcast, that I think people are forgetting how over Yuka Sakazaki is and how loud of a reaction she could get from the fans, and she really did. So this, again, did exactly what it was supposed to do. Yuka looked great. She beats Penelope Ford, and it looks like, we could potentially maybe have a challenger for Britt Baker at some point, or at least a believable female presence that could kind of help build up potential challengers for Britt Baker down the line somewhere. So both these matches, in my opinion, were fun. They did what they needed to do. And when you have sub 5-minute matches like this, there are stories that you can tell, and in my opinion, both matches told the stories that needed to be told. So, Anthony, I lump these two together because, in my opinion, they are designed to do basically the same things. It's just one with Sammy Guevara and one with Yuka Sakazaki. So, when you look at these two matches as a pair, did they accomplish what? And Sergi, I don't know what happened there, but obviously he doesn't want Anthony to answer this question. He did.
Sorry.
Sergi has an issue with the way these two matches went, I think. That's, but Anthony, I will send that question.
No, not at all. I had something loud accidentally started playing. No, continue.
Well, question goes to Anthony. Did these two matches do their job, in your opinion?
Yeah, they're perfectly fine matches. Did what they did. So I guess, look, I don't really have much to say about the matches that haven't been said elsewhere, or a couple of minutes. So let's just talk about a couple of quick things. So Yuta Wheeler, very very interesting. That he's actually like a very big free agent at the moment. He's been doing stuff with had interest from New Japan, had a tryout with WWE recently, and now he's doing some dark matches and a match on Dynamite at AEW. So very sought after guy, and he got to show off why that is. So it'll be interesting to see if he ends up actually getting signed by AEW, or whether or not he does end up going to another promotion. But he looks nice in the ring. He suits very well. It looks like he's going to go join the Best Friends for a bit. Perfectly good spot for him. He's been doing really good stuff on Dark and that, so had some really good matches. So yeah, look, it was a good match. It gave Sammy some time on TV. Gave him a Dynamite win, especially after last week. Sammy is so over, it's not even funny. So they're obviously gonna keep pushing that, see where that happens. But yeah, it was just a match for a match's sake. Interesting to see the viewership. I know obviously a lot of people don't really care, but obviously over 1 million views for the night, which was fantastic. And the high point of that night was the Britt Baker promo, followed by this Sammy versus Will Yuta match. So that was that 1,133,000 views on there, and then it did drop down to 1,003,003 views during the women's match. I would have preferred Penelope go over, to be honest. She's improved a lot in the ring, and I think a secondary solid heel. It would have done a lot for her to get this victory. I think a lot more than Yuka Sakazawa. Obviously, she's just returning. So they wanted to give her the big win. So I understand why they did it, but just for where the I guess the vision is in right now, I think it would have been better for Penelope to win rather than Yuka, because they've already built up quite a lot of potential challenges for Britt after Nyla. So I don't think that Yuka needs to be in that sort of, I guess, that picture right this second, where Penelope probably could have used that big win more than Yuka. But it is what it is. Hopefully we get some more women's stuff. I'm sounding like a bit of a broke record there, but I'll keep saying it until they do better. So but yeah, they're perfectly fine matches. Did what they needed to do. No more really to say on them.
Well, we can kind of parlay this, specifically the Sakazaki Penelope Ford match, with the Britt Baker promo that was also on this show. And Britt Baker is super over. I think she is basically the opposite of the Hangman Page situation, where Hangman is becoming so over as a challenger, and you're kind of reaching that point where he is one of the most over acts in wrestling right now as a challenger, and so his championship reign probably will not be able to match that, whereas Britt Baker kind of went in the reverse direction, where her challenge was the build for her, and now that she is champion, it feels like she's getting more over every week, and so it feels like the belt is really doing much more for her than it would do, for example, for Hangman Page. And that's, I think, really a credit to her, because she has done such a great job of reinventing herself and understanding her character and what she wants to be. So to me, I love seeing her on TV. The issue is her challengers. And Nyla Rose, I just don't care at all about Nyla Rose. I really don't. I don't want to see her in this match. I don't care what she does. I know she's not going to win. I don't care about her as a character. And as much as I like Vicky Guerrero in terms of what she does, and I guess she's still a heel, but I don't care about her either, to be honest. So it does feel like, to kind of, again, just connect these two, that AEW is searching for the first really big feud for Britt Baker that people will get into. I think they threw Nyla Rose in there because Britt needs a challenger at some point during this run of 4 shows that they have, these big shows that are going on. Britt needs a challenger, so they just kind of threw Nyla Rose in there because they're like, well, she's believable, so whatever, that'll do. But in terms of what comes next, I feel like there's several names that could go up there. So maybe Yuka Sakazaki is someone that they're looking to put in that picture going forward. So, Sergi, for you, I mean, Anthony said he preferred that Penelope Ford go over in this particular situation. Do you feel like this is a potential match where we are seeing a challenger down the line for Britt Baker, or is this something else for maybe a different story that they're building?
Oh no, I definitely agree that that they're building Yuka Sakazaki for Britt Baker. I think that maybe we've forgotten a little bit that they have history. Yuka Sakazaki Britt Baker's the one who put Yuka Sakazaki on the shelf for a while, and there's great footage of her using the using the ring rope to injure her by basically setting up her teeth in the ring rope and then kicking it,
right?
And her bloody mouth, and it's fantastic footage to use in building up a feud. They haven't gotten there yet, but I think it's clear that that's why they're building up Yuka Sakazaki, is because they are thinking of her as a challenger in the future. And she gets, as you said, she gets incredible heat. So I was not surprised that she won, and not at all disappointed that she won. I do agree that it's the right decision, especially because, she's not winning for her own sake. She's winning to build her up to pass that heat on to Britt Baker. Britt Baker is a fantastic heel with fantastic fan reactions. It's kind of a lot like Ricky Starks. I wish that the fans remembered that she's the bad guy a bit more. But sometimes the fans have trouble with that. It's like, no, she's awful. Let's remember how awful she is and how awful she has been to everyone around her, her friends. She's terrible to Tony, and Tony likes her, etc.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, for me, that's kind of the endearing part about her, is that fans just they love her no matter what she does. It's kind of like you made a comparison to The Rock earlier, talking about the idea of a heel being cheered. To me, that's kind of what Britt Baker is. Like, if you look at The Rock's character, he insulted everyone, he insulted the fans, he did all this terrible stuff, and people still loved what he did. And Britt Baker, that to me is where she's at. Like, the fact that she is so terrible to everyone is what fans like about her. Like, it's not a bug, it's a feature. You know what I mean? And so to me, I
can see it. I don't like it, but I can see it.
I bring it up just because I think what you can do is it would be better if AEW just recognized that. Like, they understand, look, you don't have to turn her babyface. Like, to me, that would hurt. You keep her heel and just understand fans are going to cheer her. And to me, that is the mistake that they made with Nyla Rose, is that they kind of made Nyla Rose a babyface because she kind of has to be, but then she puts Britt Baker through a table. Like, it's very confusing the way that they're treating Nyla Rose. So for me, you don't have to do any of that. Like, Britt Baker's going to get over no matter who she's facing. So there's almost a degree of freedom, because I think face or heel, Britt Baker is going to be over. Fans are going to like what she does. And so it almost gives you, like I said, like a degree of freedom with her, that you can put anyone in the ring and it'll kind of work.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I just feel like in some of the situations where she's been like specifically and genuinely cruel and evil, especially if they do make Yuka Sakazaki this challenger, that the fan reaction that they may get isn't going to suit that story very well. But it does give them some freedom to have her face both heels and baby faces, a lot like Cody does.
Yeah, you make a good point there as well. Anthony, going forward, I know that you would have preferred that Penelope Ford go over in this match. She could have used it more than Sakazaki could have. So does that mean that for you'd like to see Britt Baker essentially go into feuds as kind of a babyface who acts like a heel? I mean, who would you like to see Britt Baker feud against that would make you really care about the story that they're trying to tell?
Anyone but Nyla. And look, that's to be honest. Look, and I said this last time I was on the podcast. If you remember, I mentioned that this story just was not good, and nothing they've done has made it good. This week, where they did the promo with Britt, and then they immediately went to Vicky in that for the response, that was actually well done. It was well segmented, and I liked how they did that. How they did the response straight away. That was pretty. That was a pretty cool idea that you don't see much. So. Kudos for that. But yeah, in terms of this match, I just want it to be done and her to move on. There's so many challenges, and this is, I guess, why I thought that Penelope could go over. I know that they've got the history and all that, but you've got Thunder Rosa, you've got Ty Conte, you've got Shida, you've got Thunder Rosa, obviously all sitting in that top 5 outside of Nyla. So you've got plenty of time to build up, build her up for that match with Britt. I just felt that Penelope probably could have used that match a little bit more, but I'm not, like I said, I'm not really overly complaining. It's just a personal preference for me. I just didn't feel like she needed the win as much as Penelope probably did. She hasn't had a big win for a while now, and if we remember, she is a former person, like number 1 contender for a title. She did fight Shida, but ever since then she really just hasn't done much. And it's just she has done a lot to improve. So yeah, I think having a second tier bad guy in the division might be something good. She could definitely fill that role, even if she's not going for it until they I guess do whatever. But yeah, look, let's see what happens here. I just want this to be done so Britt can go on and do something better, something more worth what we all wanted her first feud to be. Like I said, it's just a disappointing first feud for her, especially when they were saying, and she was saying as a character, that this is a new era, and it just feels too much still like the same. And that's the common criticism of AEW that I have, that they've just not done the same for the women's division that they've done for every other division, and it's a bit of a shame. So, let's just hope that after this Nyla thing, they step things up.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. One thing, though, that on AEW does feel really different is what they're doing with Miro. The promo, I understand that. I think they showed it on Elevation. I think it was where they showed this video package promo.
So they didn't show the belt. They just said they showed us package. So they did show a package, and he said that he showed that his current title and said that he was going to implement a change, but they did not show the new promo, new thing, and there was different wording in it. So he did say something similar. It was in a similar setting, but it was not the same, and he did not show the new belt.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that they did show the new belt. I think it looks fantastic. I think it looks a lot better than any of the previous designs, just in terms of aesthetics that we've had for the TNT Championship before. And Miro,
Can I just also give a shout out to Maggie underscore IQ, who has done like a she's Bulgarian and it's also on Fightful Wrestling. Basically, she's done a full big post in regards to Bulgarian history and how it actually details and how it's implemented into the belt design. It's very interesting in regards to how they've actually done it and how they've implemented. Like, she talks about the colors and their representation. So yeah, if you care about that thing, just jump. Fightful Wrestling has the article, but yeah, Maggie underscore IQ on Twitter also is the one who did it. But yeah, it's a very interesting post. I've shared it as well myself, so if you want, you can just go to my Twitter. But yeah, it is a very interesting take from someone who has that history of explaining what all the colors and symbolism means. There's a lot that actually has gone into this.
Interesting. I'm going to have to check that out because I think what I really like about Miro's character is he is a character that's built to not have to be in super long feuds. I think when you compare him to a guy like Kenny Omega, Kenny needs a really good long feud in order to really bring out the best in his character. And so I think, for example, if you were to say, we'll give an extra couple weeks to his feud with Jungle Boy, I think it would have made that feud even a little bit better. I think that Kenny really thrives on being able to have builds and being able to cut promos and do segments and things where, that's where you get the best out of him. And that's how he gets the best out of his challenger. I think Miro, on the other hand, his character is built so that he doesn't need to have super long feuds. I think you can plug him in with, anyone that is even remotely believable in the TNT Championship picture, and it'll work. And I think it works because Miro, again, this is kind of a common theme, understands his character, understands what he needs to do, what he's trying to do in order to get himself over, and it just really works. Like, it works with his style, it works with how he wrestles, how dominant he is. And so, to me, if you put anyone in there against Miro, it's going to be something that I want to see, and I want to see more Miro on TV. I want to see more promos, because even though I do think it works without a long-term kind of feud for him, I want to see him in more of a feud where he can explore who his character is and how it plays with whoever you want to plug in there against him. So I just wanted to make a quick mention of it. I think he's been great. I think he continues to get better every week as a character, and I want to see him do more stuff. Sergi, what do you think about his Miro's character right now?
I absolutely agree that Miro is doing a fantastic job of being the intimidating monster force of nature that he needs to be. The religious aspects of it are a little weird, but it's not so much so that it ruins everything else, because it's just everything else is so good that's like, okay, I'll go with that. You're the Redeemer, cool. But yeah, he's just fantastic at playing the part of the guy who's just a force of nature and just sort of a hurricane. Really, in a way, he's AEW's Brock Lesnar. And it's interesting that he has the what some people would consider the mid-card belt, but everyone who's held it has never treated it as such. They've always Cody and Darby did a great job of making you believe that they believe the TNT belt was the most important thing to hold in all of wrestling. Mm-hmm. And Miro has been the beneficiary of that, and that he has that to build on.
Yeah, that's a great point, that if you are going to have a championship like this, whoever the champion is needs to be able to make it feel like it is the only belt for them. And so far, everyone, I think Cody, I think Brody Lee, I think Darby Allin, and now I think Miro have all convinced us that this is the only championship they care about. So they've done their job, certainly in that respect. Anthony, from a story perspective, what kind of feud would you like to see Miro in right now? What do you need to see from more of a long-term challenger for Miro that would make this more believable, I guess, from his perspective?
It's believable. I'm all in on the Miro train. I've really liked his work and all the promos he's been cutting in that. I just want him a bit more regular on TV. Every fortnight defended against someone, whoever they want. I just want to see him on TV. At least every week I want to see him, even if it's just cutting a promo, but I need to see him. And that's one of the reasons why this has been important, that, this belt is featured on their show every week at least, Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that so far every single champion has had their own belt. Yes, Cody's wasn't finished, but, he lost it once it got finished. So, everyone who's held it for, a length of time has now got their own belt. So I hope that's something that they continue doing, that's if someone's holds it, they get their own spin on it. And that's, I think, going to keep things very interesting to see what they're going to do with it and how they're going to do it. In regards to where we go, look, you've got to put it, you're probably going to be wanting to put it on one of these really hot overacts. Jungle Boy and Sammy Guevara come to mind. That's probably where I'd go. Put it on someone who is red hot and just let them go crazy with a week. Go back to the weekly defending on it. Do the whole babyface thing. But yeah, there's still mileage here in regards to it. In regards to Miro's work, I was talking to a friend, another fan, who said that if you wanna do something totally crazy, you have Hangman win the belt. The week after, he does an open challenge for the belt, saying, "Yep, no, we're going to do an open challenge." Miro, TNT title holder, walks out, kicks his ass, becomes double belt Miro. I mean,
I guess if you want to do something totally insane, I guess that would qualify.
Exactly, but just he's having a run. He is finally the beast that we all wanted him to be in WWE. He's doing great work. It's not time to take it off of him yet. I was definitely towards Darby's end. I was like, okay, it is getting very close to that time when he's defended it enough. Now it's getting time to take it off of him. I don't feel that way yet. I think we've still got a while left on this one, especially since he's not wrestling every week. But he definitely does need to.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I do think that whether it be Jungle Boy or Sammy Guevara, I think that there are several young, super hot baby faces, and you can't put the world title on all of them. So, using the TNT title to do that, and let me add another name in there. Maybe if you get a Rey Fenix in there to potentially be that guy, someone who, again, if you want to have him go out and just perform at a high level, put on great matches every week, assuming that he's healthy enough to do that, there's no one that's going to deliver you quality matches on such a consistent level the way that Rey Fenix can. So that's another guy. But I do agree. At some point, not now, but at some point, you want to pull the trigger on one of these super hot baby faces. That's the guy to do it against, because it would kind of wreck their momentum if you were to do it against Adam Page, but to do it against Miro, that would really, and it would free up Miro to maybe go after Hangman or whoever happens to hold the world title at that point. I think they've put themselves in a really good position with the TNT title. They started things off hot with Cody, and I think after Cody, it's just kind of built. Every champion has looked better and better, and so whoever is the one that ends up taking it from Miro is going to inherit it in a better place than it has been at each defense subsequently. And that's really all you want from a title belt, is to make its champion look better than they were before they had it. And so the TNT title, in my opinion, is just a perfect example of how to elevate people once they win that title.
Oh, sure, absolutely. And going back to what Anthony was saying about there being a lot of young hot baby faces, so you were saying that too, Griff, that would be really credible next champions. That also means that there's a lot of guys like Sammy, like Jungle Boy, who would make really fantastic defenses for Miro, that would make great matches for Miro as champion, and the type of match that you buy into as this really might be a change. And you could do several of those before you pick the one that you actually go with.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And again, when you talk about a title like this that is going to be defended a lot relative to the World Championship, which, as we were talking about earlier, can go a month or two between defenses or more, you want to have each defense feel like, or at least a lot of them feel like, maybe we'll see a title change here. So I definitely agree with that. That's what you want from a title in this position on the card. Let's move on finally to the main event here. Darby Allin, Ethan Page in a Coffin match. It's the first one in AEW. In my opinion, there really wasn't anything like insane going on in this match. I kind of thought that we were going to get like Darby Allin falling off a 7-story building into a coffin. So maybe I was being unfair with how I was comparing it, like the expectations I had of it. But I mean, the match was really, really good, so it's pretty much exactly what I expected it to be. But yeah, I mean, it was just like it was really solid. This kind of match is kind of difficult to get my thoughts out, just because it's like I almost don't really know how to describe it other than it was wild, it was fun, and it was not as brutal as I kind of expected it to be, but it ends up being, I think, a really solid match. Darby Allin goes over, which was a little surprising. In my opinion, I thought it might have been Ethan Page that was going to go over. It felt like he had more to gain with a win than Darby Allin did, but I think it shows that AEW still believes that Darby Allin is an upper mid-carder or a main event level guy. So I don't know. I mean, as far as this match is concerned and where Darby Allin might go next, Anthony, what were your thoughts on this main event?
Yeah, look, it was a very solid main event. I did enjoy it. Again, I do recognize what you said, because I do agree. I thought that it might have been a bit more violent. We might have seen a bit more, especially with the blood feud that, these two have. However, that said, these two are far from done with each other. I imagine that, we'll see these two pick things up. And, this could be one of those things. Early days AEW, I think that a lot of people linked MJF and Jungle Boy together as, or a lot of people have now linked Sammy and MJF together as, two of those people that are always going to be feuding together. I think that you can put these two in that same basket, and whenever they feud, it's always going to be, very brutal. They did a lot of stuff to each other. So yeah, look, I was also surprised. I thought that Ethan definitely could have used the win in regards to this one, but I think for this one, AEW, I don't know if they really knew what they had in Ethan when they signed him. Like, obviously they knew he was a good wrestler, but I think he's gotten a lot more over than they thought. Because I think that whole tag team with Scorpio Sky was supposed to be to push Scorpio Sky up, not Ethan. And now it's Ethan's show. He's made it very much his own thing. Like, they're both there, but I very much see Ethan, being the better of those two. And, all credit to him. He's putting in the work, doing the thing that he's doing. Yeah, look, it would be very interesting to see where they go with both of them. But yeah, for me, I don't think that this is anywhere near done, and that's great. Having that throwback, that rivalry throughout the company. Over the next 5 years, having these two come against each other. Once a year or something. I'm ready. I'm here to finish your. I've tried. I've licked my wounds. I've done my thing. I've reevaluated, and next time, Ethan can go. It's one of those things where they can keep coming back to each other, and that's not a bad thing as long as there's enough space. So yeah, look, it'll be interesting to see what happens now and where they go and what each do. I know a lot of people were suggesting maybe a Sting versus Darby match down the line. That would be kind of interesting, but I don't know if they're going to go down that way. But yeah, look, obviously Darby's going to need something to do it all out, because as he's proven, he's a massive draw. So yeah, I guess their plan now will be to build him up for whatever he's going to be doing at All Out.
Yeah, and I would absolutely agree that I feel like AEW like they almost, I don't want to say miscalculated with Ethan Page, because they didn't really, but I think they underestimated what they had in him, exactly like what you said. I think Scorpio Sky was going to be the guy that they were going to build, and then Ethan Page comes in and they were like, oh wow, this we really got something here with this guy. So that's kind of why it was surprising to me that he lost, because I felt that AEW made that realization when they switched, when they kind of flipped between Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page, and they made Ethan Page the guy that was getting main event matches and having this high profile feud with the former TNT champion.
Also, full credit for AEW doing that and not sticking to Scorpio Sky. We've seen in a lot of companies where they won't budge on their decision, but they saw the fans and they saw people getting around Ethan, and they chose to do that switch. So full credit to that.
Absolutely agree. But for that reason, I thought Ethan Page was going to win, because I really don't think Darby Allin would have been hurt at all by a loss. I think Ethan Page really would have been helped by a win. So I'm not saying that it's the wrong decision, just kind of a surprising one to me. So, Sergi, as far as this match goes, it's AEW's first ever Coffin match. What did you think about it? Could we see the stipulation again? Did it work for you?
Many aspects to that. Certainly it could happen again. I think it's definitely going to be one of those, it's going to be a signature for possibly only for Darby, or at least only for your spookier wrestlers, Malakai Black or something. It was a fantastic match, well put together, did everything it was supposed to do. I just completely, I hear the phrase, so-and-so needed the win more a lot, and I always disagree with everyone who's saying that. It's pretty consistent with me. If wins should never be based on who needs it. Wins are based on who's being built up and what for. Darby is the star. Of course he should win. The only reason he would lose would be to set up a rematch where he would win. This is definitely, Ethan can afford to lose in the sense that he's the heel schmuck. He's supposed to show ass. He'll lick his wounds and come back and bother somebody else, and act like and hypocritically act like he never lost anything. A lot like Matt Hardy was just going on about like, oh, this doesn't count because I was tired. But what really impressed me about this match the most is, well, first off, the standards or the expectations were so high. It's amazing that a match where they took the ropes off and were using that hook the way that they were, and the ring steps the way that they did. People are saying, oh, I thought it'd be more brutal. It was very brutal. I really enjoyed it. And the thing that I liked the best about it, though, was the character work. Darby knows exactly who he's supposed to be. He knows exactly how to put across his character and portray his character. And it all paid off in the perfect way when the match was over and Darby is suddenly still doing things. And you go, wait, what's he doing? He adjusts the coffin. He climbs up to the top, and with anyone else, you'd say, has he lost his mind? He already won. But with Darby, your immediately thought is instead, oh, well, yeah, of course. Of course. That wasn't enough for him. Just winning was not enough. That guy said he was going to be the nail in his coffin, and he's going to say, nope, I'm the nail in your coffin. It was a fantastic ending to a fantastic night. And the timing is just amazing. They had 13 minutes to work, and they fit it all in there. I just can't imagine being under that time constraint like we are right now, and having to hit that mark and doing it perfectly.
Yeah, this is definitely wrestling executed at a very, very high level, especially with something that you don't really, there's not a ton of precedent for this, because I think if you're just having a match in the main event, that's one thing. You've had those before. But to have a Coffin match, I mean, yeah, there's been casket matches before, but they all involve The Undertaker, and he fights a much different style than what these two were coming out with. So there's very little, if any, precedent for what they were doing in this match. And you're in the main event, so you're absolutely right. You do have a time constraint to hit. You have your mark, and so I think credit has to go to both these men for performing at this level. AEW, All Elite Wrestling, this is an elite level of wrestling that we're seeing from these guys. And the fact that for both men, it was not expected that they were going to be able to perform at this level before they got into AEW. Darby Allin was basically an unknown before he got into AEW. Only the hardest of hardcore indie fans knew who Darby Allin was. And he's turned into this. And then Ethan Page seemed like he was the backup to his partner when he was in Impact. The North, his partner was the bigger draw. So to me, that is it just shows how well these guys have come along in AEW in terms of their development, how good they've gotten, and just credit goes to them with how much work they've put in. So this, I thought it was a really good match. Really quickly, I want to ask both of you. Anthony made the point that Darby Allin will certainly be on the All Out card, and I absolutely agree. So just real quickly, we'll start with Anthony. Who should be his opponent at All Out?
No idea. There's no one I can think of right now. So, that's a total unknown for me. There's no one I particularly, would like to go, oh, yeah, that will be a good match. I think anyone who he has a match with will be good. It'll be probably crazy. But, yeah, at this moment, I've got no one. And that's a good thing, that it's going to be very, very, on the spot of. But I have a feeling that over the next couple of weeks, we'll probably see which direction he's heading in.
Yeah. Sergi, is there a name for you that stands out as a potential Darby Allin opponent at All Out?
I haven't given a lot of thought. It's definitely too soon to have any. There's been no lead up to any friction between him and Sting. But they could certainly have a respect match. That wouldn't be out of character for them, and would certainly be a huge a match that with a ton of anticipation for such a big show as All Out. If they don't want to go in that direction, if they think it's too soon to go in that direction for any form of hostility between the two, there's always the possibility of Scorpio Sky trying to get some revenge for his friend. Yep. But there are no obvious next stories for Darby, which really means that it could be anybody, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and I would absolutely agree with that. I think there's several guys that you could put him against. I think if you wanted to do the matchup of young guys that are hungry trying to make their way up, then you could do like a Jungle Boy possibly or something like that, because again, Darby Allin, they do have some history there when Jungle Boy challenged for the TNT title, so I think you could potentially do that. I agree. If you wanted to do a respect match between Darby and Sting, it would work. If you wanted to do Darby versus Scorpio Sky, it would work. So I'm just going to pair it with both of you guys said. The fact that there isn't an obvious opponent is a really good thing, because it's not because there isn't one, it's because there's too many. And that just goes to show, I think Darby Allin has just proven time and time again that he is a draw, he is a main event wrestler, and he thrives in that spot. It's not even that he deserves that spot, it's that he has earned that spot because of how good he's been in that high-pressure main event, let's deliver a great match kind of spot. And so I really can't say enough good things about Darby Allin and what he's done, the growth that he's had in AEW, how he's gone from the kind of hardcore deathmatch style to now being a legitimate main event wrestler. And I mean that in the most literal sense. He has occupied the main event more than almost anyone else in AEW, and it's always been good. So credit to him. He's done a phenomenal job with that. One last thing that I want to mention, or more specifically that I know Anthony wants to mention, is tickets went on sale for Grand Slam in New York. That is coming up September, I think, 22nd or somewhere around that area. I'm excited for that because I'm a huge tennis fan, and so that's going down in Arthur Ashe Stadium just a couple weeks after the U.S. Open will have been concluded. So I'm excited just from that perspective. But Anthony, I know you wanted to talk real quickly about these ticket sales.
Oh yeah, this is some PW Musings breaking news. So on the Twitter account WrestleTix, they do great work, so go give them a follow if you'd like this sort of information. But they're basically reporting that already AEW has sold 14,000 tickets for that show. There's only 2,430 tickets available currently, which would put that show about 16,829 people, so nearly 20,000 people at that show. Also, Brendan Thurston from WrestleNomics has also confirmed and said that if this show currently stands, that will be the biggest, most attended AEW show in history, and it surpasses the first Double or Nothing back in 2019 and the first Dynamite in Washington, which only had 12,000. So we're currently about 14,000 tickets already sold, with about 2,000 more. That was about 30 minutes ago on today. So by the time this podcast is out, those tickets will have been sold. And by the way, they've been opening up new sections all night. Wow, so it started out as 10,000. It's now up to 14,000 already sold. It's now up to 16,000. WrestleTix suggests that it might get up to about 18 to 20,000 by the time they've opened up everywhere. But yeah, just the sell rate. And just reminder, there is no card for this show. There's no card. There's no nothing. We have no idea what's going on at this show. Just that there's going to be 20.
It's not even a pay-per-view. That's the thing. If you said those were the numbers for All Out, then fine. But this is a Dynamite.
No, it's outsold All Out, and it did it quicker too.
That is unbelievable.
Because All Out is all sold out, so that's all gone. All the tickets gone there. I just checked as well. Fight for the Fallen only has about 1,000 to 2,000 tickets left. There are 5,000 at the moment sold already, so they're nearly a full house. Next week's sold out again. This week was sold out. So, in regards to their ticket sales, they are selling absolute crazy. But yeah, wow. for a wrestling show. So just remember, obviously, the AEW had only been around for a few months with fans before COVID. Their entire history has been mainly in lockdown. And they've come out now and are selling out this stadium so fast that they literally they don't have enough tickets for it. So, and they've been selling out everywhere. So that's just the anticipation and how crazy that this is.
Wow. It's unbelievable. And I just, this isn't, I don't want to get into, dunking on whoever, I'm not interested in that. I just want to say that I am really happy for Cody Rhodes, for Kenny Omega, for the Young Bucks, for Tony Khan, for the guys that had this vision. And the challenge was, remember that at the very beginning, that I can't remember who said it might have been Meltzer, that said in the US, you cannot sell more than 10,000 tickets to a wrestling event if you're not WWE. That was how this whole thing started. And now you have these guys that came up with this vision and said, you know what, there is a market to sell this many tickets to wrestling fans, whether you're WWE or not. We can do it. And the fact that they've done it, and the fact that they're doing this, they're selling this many tickets, they're doing it at this pace. I'm really happy for these guys, because I really respect the entrepreneurial vision that it takes to put something like this together, and to have it work out this way, so quickly, within 2 years, to have it be working out this way. I'm really happy for those guys. Congratulations, because they really put something special together. They really did something that is worth shouting out, and yes. I'm happy for those guys, man.
Yeah, look, this show is going to be something special. Like I said, nearly 20,000 people in attendance, the biggest show. And obviously it's a couple of weeks after All Out, so we're going to have, obviously, Hangman as champion. So I'm just wondering what they're going to do for it, because obviously they're going to see this. And we all know Tony. He loves to do something big. I reckon we'll get something big at this show. Like you have to do something big here. So look, what that is, who knows? But that pop from those 20,000, it's going to be an insane show. And full credit to everyone that's, just shows that, there is a market here, and it's very hungry, for this sort of stuff. And, that they've built up all these guys that can sell these tickets to a point, to this level is just is amazing. So look, let's go. Let's do this. It's already been 2 great weeks. We got next week. We've got a Texas death match. The week after, we're probably going to see the Elite versus Dark Order in the 5-person tag. Who knows what else? I remember a few weeks ago, Meltzer was saying that now I don't know if it was speculation or if it was an actual report, but he was saying that he has a feel. I think it's like a feeling. He has a feeling that Tony Khan has someone bigger than Andrade tucked away. Probably the time when he's going to release that would be at that New York show.
Okay. So you're getting. I'm going to will this out there until it happens, and it probably never will. But I'm gonna continue to do it anyway. What I would do in any kind of realistic sense is have Hangman versus whoever. It doesn't really matter. Whoever his first challenger is going to be. Have him open the show. That's going to be the first pop in front of 20,000 people. Is the Hangman pop. Main event is Proud and Powerful winning the tag titles. That's the way I would like to see it done. And I think realistically that could happen. Now, in my I'm going to put this out there until it happens way of doing things. Main event is Hangman versus a mystery opponent. Mystery opponent's Brock Lesnar. I'm going to put it out there until it happens. It's never going to happen, but I'm going to keep saying it until it happens. If we're talking like bigger than Andrade, that's the guy. So it's not going to happen. But Sergi, any comment on this?
Sure. If he's healthy by then, though, a go-go would be a good option too, though, right?
Okay, that is definitely true. That is
just making fun of your Anthony Ogogo love. No worries.
That's true.
I think it's really interesting that what Anthony was saying about the demand specifically for these tickets based on nothing, but knowing it's a Dynamite taping. It's not a pay-per-view or anything. It's a Dynamite taping, one of the ones with a special name, and it's in this big of a venue. People are excited just because they know they have that trust that, okay, if AEW is booking this size of a venue, they've got to have something big planned. Because, of course, there's plenty of demand just because it's AEW, but it's selling this fast kind of says that that there's something extra pushing it. And since there's no plan, it's not a pay-per-view, it's not anything major except we've called it Grand Slam. It's just the fact that okay, AEW has booked this massive stadium, they must have something great. It's going to happen, and that's something to look forward to.
Absolutely, and I can tell you can look forward to that show, and you can also look forward to the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast after that show, because that we'll be talking about it. That's assuming that whatever happens there, we've all recovered from, which is. If my pie in the sky thing happens, I probably won't have. Like, if it's a Brock Lesnar debut on that show, we're doing the podcast afterwards without me. I'm just warning you right now. But you can until that happens.
Griff's just laid out. He can't deal.
That's barely an exaggeration. Like that's only half joking at that. But I can tell you what, before that, we will be here every week breaking down Dynamite, because even going up to that, there's so much stuff still to happen. We still have Fyter Fest Night 2. We still have Fight for the Fallen. We still have Homecoming. We still have All Out. There's so much stuff that's still going to happen in AEW between now and Grand Slam, when I inevitably just keel over after whatever happens there. So you need to make sure that whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you're giving us a 5-star review, you're making sure that you're checking this out every week. If you're on YouTube, subscribe so you can see this and all the other cool stuff that we do on the Pro Wrestling Musings YouTube channel. And if you're not on either of those places, then you can be on Twitter, where you will find both of these guys, and you will find them at the places that they will now tell you. Anthony, please tell the people where they can find you.
So you can find me at Anthony Down Under on Twitter. And as every week, I always give a shout out to something to go check out. So this week's shout out is to go check out Avalanche Style on Twitter. So at Avalanche Style, who does a super nerdy, awesome thing, which is wrestling crosswords. So crosswords full of wrestling questions. I've done 2 of them, and they are fantastic fun. So yeah, if you want something nerdy to do during your weekend, suggest going over and checking out those crosswords.
Awesome. That sounds like a great time. Sounds like I have my weekend sorted. Sergi, where can the people find you?
All right. I put out a preview article almost every week. Had a few weeks off, but I'm back at it. It's called Styles Make Fights. It is at the Pro Wrestling Musings website. The section to go back and read all of them is prowrestlingmusings.com/styles-make-fights. And there I use my Styles Make Fights dashboard to look at the historical statistics of each competitor and use that to talk a little bit about what we can expect from their upcoming match.
And you should absolutely do that. We talk about this every time Sergi is on the podcast, but there's always great stuff in Styles Make Fights. Always a unique way to look at the matches, both pre and post, by the way. And, we talked earlier about Matt Hardy and Christian, so that's a taste of the kind of insight that you can see from Styles Make Fights. So definitely go check that out, prowrestlingmusings.com. I have been Griff from GA. You can check me out on my personal YouTube channel, General Admission Wrestling. And if you're over on YouTube, again, just throw a subscription towards Pro Wrestling Musings on YouTube. There's always fun stuff going on. And we have more really cool stuff planned down the line. So hopefully you are subscribed there so you can see it. We will see you next week for the Pro Wrestling Musings podcast. Fyter Fest Night 2 is going to be an insane night, I'm sure. And so Pro Wrestling Musings podcast is going to be here with you like every week. So make sure you're checking us out. But until then, we appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time.